All right, guys, I want to bring in my guest today. Today we're going to be talking to Sandy Wesson. Oh, you guys are going to love Sandy. She's going to have some amazing information for you. So we'll talk a little bit about her. Sandy has been a registered nurse for 42 years. During those years, she worked in the intensive care unit as well as hospice and palliative care and other aspects of healthcare. 10 years ago, she left the clinical nursing to move into the realm of functional wellness, becoming a certified as a functional nutritional therapy practitioner and as a certified functional blood work specialist. Her goal is to put the power of health back in the hands of her clients rather than being dependent on doctors. What a concept. We love that here, right? Sandy has also been an energy healer for more than 20 years. She utilizes her gifts of empathy, clairaudience, and clairsentience to tune into her clients' vibrations. As an empath, she is finding that people have a greater need for energy healing to assist in opening their own power to heal. And it is my honor to have her on this program. Sandy, thank you so much for being with us today.
Hey, George, thanks so much for the invitation to join you and your crowd at the Wellness Talk. I love what you do. I was sharing with you just before we started recording. It's like, this is my bailiwick. This is my love,
Yes.
Being a nurse and being there to help people. The fact that you're getting information out to the masses
Right.
is awesome. I mean, it's critical. It's necessary. So
Yeah,
now more
absolutely.
than ever,
Yes.
we all need to be the biggest advocate for our own health. And in order to do that, we have to learn as much as we can.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely. It's
yeah.
about taking responsibility. That's what we talk about on this show
Yep.
every week.
Yep.
And I love chatting with folks like you because and you're on the front lines. I mean, you're literally there working with people, every day. You're seeing this stuff, and so I want to get your side of what you're seeing and what you're doing and what's working and what's not working. This is why I bring experts like yourself on the show. So it's a pleasure to have you on here. So first, I want to kind of take us back for a second because obviously you were a nurse for all those years, and you were kind of on the conventional side of things, right, for all those years, working in the intensive care unit and that type of thing. So the obvious question would be, why did you make the change? What were you seeing, and what was your thought process in making the change over to kind of, like, for lack of a better term, for the other side of the fence?
I was just going to say, go to the other side.
Yeah, exactly, the other side. So what was your thinking on that?
I have to start by saying I'm really grateful for my experience as a nurse.
Right.
I learned a lot. I had an opportunity to give a lot to people. Even when I worked in the intensive care unit, I wasn't as in tune with my psychic gifts, but there were just things that I knew. Like, I'd be working with somebody. We had a patient that had, was in multi-system failure.
Wow.
Couldn't give a lot of pain medications, even though there'd been some surgeries, so that was limited. And so working with this patient, I had never done visualizations. I mean, I'm a young nurse in my early 30s, and I really in 20s and 30s, and I really didn't know all those other modalities.
Right.
But I just was kind of given this information to just help the person relax through visualizations, starting at the toes and working all the way up to the body and, through the body to help relieve pain in a way that I couldn't do because I couldn't give adequate pain medications. And it's things like that honestly, in my life, I have been guided. And I'm really grateful for that. It's taken time to really open to those gifts fully.
Sure.
But even when I was guided to move from where I was living, which was
Right.
Portland, Oregon, and working in hospitals there,
Okay.
to Central Oregon, to Bend. And so we did, my husband and I did. And I thought, man, I'm going to come right here. I'm going to get another job in nursing. I'm going to, do pretty much what I had been doing. only to find out that no, that wasn't in the plan. There was a variety of things that happened. My husband had a stroke, and then 2 years later,
Oh,
he died after my mom
oh,
died, my sister died. So really, I was positioned where I was supposed to be,
sure.
not working clinically. Of course,
Right.
I had wanted to go back to school, but then suddenly it's like, I think that's on hold too.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
right.
so I think when we are, and I'm sure you see this with a lot of people in the medical field who are now moving more into the functional medicine, like for whatever reason, we're guided to do something different.
Yeah, yeah.
So, being guided to go back to school to learn nutritional therapy. Okay.
Hmm.
Working with clients, working with people, I could get them just a certain level, but sometimes I couldn't get them over the hump. What else?
Yeah,
I was guided to go back and learn detox. So, working with clients on detoxification, getting the toxins of the herbicides, the pesticides, the glyphosate, the heavy metals
yeah,
out of their bodies. So, and then it's okay, well, and then I was guided to learn neurofeedback. All right.
yeah.
And it wasn't until, and every time when I feel like I'm guided to something, it's like, okay, I say yes, but I need help. Give me
Hmm.
more information than this. Help me
Sure,
through this next step.
sure.
And then when I had all three of those together, I kind of stepped back and went, oh, I get it now. I get it. Got to learn how the body works. Got to learn the digestion, because not taught in medicine.
Right,
Got to learn that piece. Got to learn the next piece of detoxifying the body and then helping the brain to heal. It's
right,
like,
right.
okay, I get it now.
Yeah, yeah, sure.
So, and all that time I was, even when I was working in the hospital, I was doing energy work. That
Mm,
started coming through my hands. I was receiving guided messages on how to do what I do now. Um, and so that was another piece of learning and saying, okay, this is different
hmm. Right,
when
right,
it
right.
started coming through me, but okay, teach me. And,
Wow.
so I feel very fortunate, actually, George. I feel fortunate that I learned so much as a nurse when we were able to do what we needed to do
Yeah,
clinically.
absolutely.
Um, and then moving into the realm of functional wellness and, all the next steps that I learned. So I'm
Wow.
really grateful for that.
Absolutely. No, absolutely, definitely. And we can talk about conventional medicine and how, let's say, some of the shortcomings there, but at the same time, you know there are amazing things that happen there, especially in the
Yes.
especially when it comes to emergency medicine,
Yep.
especially when acute stuff, and dealing, and
Yeah.
advances are incredible on there. I mean, that's why,
Yes.
in my opinion, we're the best in the world, and at least here, doing this stuff. So, and I give credit, to the folks out there like yourself and those who are in emergency rooms and intensive care units that are working with people every single day.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
The What's interesting as far as like a calling, right? Because I never thought for myself that, when I was young and dealing with all these issues that I was dealing with, that in some weird way, that I don't know how it happened, that I ended up on the other side of things saying, okay, I'm going to heal myself
Yeah.
without even knowing really what I was doing in the beginning, right? And
Yep.
then now teaching others to do that,
Yeah.
you really, it's the same deal. You're like, there's this calling, there's this thing
Hmm.
that's telling you, hey, it's the same thing. Like, I'm a musician, right? And,
Hmm.
even when I was a kid, I was called to play music. And like, really,
Uh-huh.
the two main themes of my life have been health and music.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, you
Which
have to.
actually go well together.
Absolutely, absolutely, you're absolutely right. But you have this calling, and the thing is now, and I'm sure you know this, right? Because when you go into the functional side of things, you have an understanding that there's going to be resistance. There's going to be other people, even your colleagues, that may look at you like, what are you, crazy? What did you have? That type of thing. Did you have resistance from colleagues saying, "What are you doing?"
Some I
Okay.
did.
Hmm.
I did. And it not terribly, not too much, but
Okay.
even way back as a young ICU nurse, I was always one who was trying to look for other information
Right.
outside of, what I learned in Western medicine. Things like this is so crazy because it's so basic. But I worked as an ICU nurse, and some of my colleagues would be complaining about muscle cramps. Oh my gosh, my legs are cramping so bad. It's like electrolytes.
Yeah. Hello.
It's like, because I went out and started, searching and learning all those other kinds of things early on.
Right.
And so it's like, really? Why is it that we in healthcare are so limited?
Right.
Why is it that we can't go beyond? Now more and more people are, of course. But, at that time, it was just like, I don't know why my legs are cramping and why I'm hurting. I'm on my feet all day, but I don't understand this. It's like,
exactly.
So,
exactly.
so I did have some pushback when I'm not anti-vax as a nurse. I've had more vaccines than probably most. And when I traveled internationally a lot, I got, including the yellow fever and all these, big vaccines. But I started to wake up and recognize that maybe, like for me, when I went to South Africa 2 weeks before we left, I went to the travel clinic because I learned I had to have a yellow fever vaccine. And so they gave me in 2 days' time, like 11 vaxes.
Wow.
And I even said, is this okay? This is a lot, is this okay for me? Oh, yeah. I learned that I won't do that again. That many so close.
Right.
To be way more careful about that and not just trust what someone else says, but to do some research.
Absolutely.
But when someone on Facebook was talking about how their child got sick from a vaccine. Mm-hmm. And all I did was, I just said, as the parent, it's okay for you to stand up and question anything.
Yeah.
It's just, don't always trust. We can any of us have a responsibility to do our own research and then do what we think needs to be done. And one of the doctors that I used to work with, oh man, did she come down hard on me on Facebook. And,
wow.
It's like, okay, I appreciate you for what you do, but I think it's time for us to part ways.
Oh, wow.
Because if I can't speak my truth just in supporting someone else. So that does happen. And of course, we've seen it with our physicians and nurses with what has gone on the last 3 years with the pandemic, going on 4 years now, how much pushback there can be because we're touching areas of their discomfort.
Yeah, exactly. And it's that whole thing of, I've often said on this show, the average person never realized that they actually have more control over their health than they think they do, because we're not taught that, right? Even as the average person who grows up, who's not a doctor, but mom and dad brought me to the doctor and the doctor gave me this, and and I had a cold and the doctor gave me this and that type of thing. So and I grew up that same way.
Yeah, you don't question what the doctor says. Absolutely.
Exactly. And we're taught, and then we have again, even in the school system, we're taught don't question. This is the way it is. You take your test, you do blah blah, and this is it. So we're society's kind of that's just the way the way we kind of grow up. And then when things like the pandemic happens and all this, and all of a sudden people are questioning, it's like, how could you, and like, well, you know what? It's about time that people actually start doing that, and my take on it is, listen, there's nothing wrong with someone wanting to take responsibility for their health and actually boosting their immune system when all these things are running around. Okay. Well, maybe I'm not as susceptible anymore. Maybe I can get rid of those comorbidities. Maybe I can be, my risk can go down. What's wrong with that?
Yes.
I mean, so, folks like yourself, folks like, this type of show, and folks who do shows like this and that type of thing, that's all we're trying to do. We're trying to educate folks and saying, hey, let's put the power in you. And this way, this, and this, it's interesting because when you do that, and people that I've worked with, when I've helped them do that, they're like, wow, I didn't know. And it actually kind of moves the needle with them and says, okay, you know what? Maybe I can do that. And so it's a good thing overall. So we got to continue this fight, and we got to continue this work as always, absolutely. Another thing I wanted to ask you, because I mean, there's so many things that I want to go over. Now, you had issues right back then when you were a nurse and stuff. You had gut issues, you had some health issues and that type of thing, right?
Oh my gosh,
And
yes.
and you were able to deal with that. So how did that work out for you?
So I had digestion issues for years, years and years. And I had brain fog
Mm,
working as a nurse. And, thankfully I knew what I was doing and I could work through the brain fog.
right.
But there were times like, dang, it's like, what is going on? And no one around me knew. No one could really tell me why I had brain fog or what was happening. And so it was when I went back to school for nutritional therapy and started really learning about all the steps of digestion, what
Mm,
it takes when our digestion isn't good,
yeah.
what that means,
Right.
how to deal with it. So it was, and as a kid, as a child, I was covered with eczema. I mean, I
Hmm.
had skin issues. I had so many issues for so long. I also didn't realize when I was living in Portland, I didn't realize I had been living in a moldy environment
Okay.
for a number of years. I knew that I felt like I was struggling more and more, but I didn't
Right.
understand why.
Right.
And so it wasn't until after I moved, and even after that, it was when I started detoxing my body and recognizing I'm still not getting to where I think I should be.
Mm,
And then I started to learn about mold and how mold, even though I was no longer living in mold, I brought all my moldy furniture with me. It's
right.
like,
Yep. Hmm.
so it was a huge learning curve, but it started out just really starting to heal my digestion
Hmm.
and then detoxing my body, working with the mold, treating parasites,
Hmm.
treating, because most of us have them.
Yeah. Right. Exactly.
Contrary to what Western medicine wants us to believe,
Right.
most of us have parasites. If we don't have good digestion, it's an opportunity for the bad bacteria, parasites to overgrow. So I had to go through all of that. So I always say I was my first patient,
Yeah.
and I think,
Exactly.
and people ask, how is it that you ended up having a focus of gut health and brain health?
Hmm.
And I said, because I needed it,
Yeah.
because I
Sure.
needed it.
Sure.
I had concussions. I had, again, the brain fog from living in mold and from the toxins in my body and in my brain, the heavy metals in my brain. So I had to do it for me,
Yeah.
like you had to do it for you.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
it gives us, um, I won't say it gives us a total expertise, but it gives us some personal experience that we can
Right.
take forward, so that when I started working with clients going through the same thing,
Hmm.
it's like, okay, when I was first in nutritional therapy school and we hadn't gotten through all the detox stuff,
Hmm.
I just knew enough to start, oh, I'm going to start treating parasites. I started doing all this stuff on my own,
Right.
but not realizing, oh, yeah, you have to open all the detox pathways first. We didn't get
Yeah.
to that part of the class.
Right.
And
Right.
so I started treating myself in such a way that I created anxiety and,
Mm,
I made myself sicker for a period of time.
right.
It
Right.
was a learning experience. I would never do
Absolutely.
that to my patients.
No.
So,
Absolutely.
so it's like I truly was my own first patient, my first client, knowing how to approach some things for people and how not to.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I was the same way. I was the same way with me. I was experimenting on myself, basically.
Yeah,
But and one of the things you learn, and you know this, that you know everyone's different, right? Everybody comes to the table differently. I'm sure
yep,
everybody who comes to see you has, everybody. Not one person is exactly the same,
that's right.
and therefore, this is where it has to be individualized. I always say it's got to be individualized to the person. I mean, you can have your basics and stuff that you use, but even your protocols and your amounts and how much you use here and there is
Yeah,
going to vary.
yeah,
It's not a one size fits all when it comes to nutritional therapy and everything you
right.
do, right?
And for me, after I became certified in blood work, functional certification for blood work,
Mm,
I look at the blood work that person already has from their doctor.
right.
I mean, can I
Right.
order? Yes. Do I always? No, because then they have to pay out of pocket for it. So if you got
Yeah.
blood work from your doctor, I don't care whether it's just, 1 year old or whether you've got like the last 4 or 5 years worth. I can look at that and look for trends. And I can
Yeah.
see a lot of deficiencies just in regular blood work. I can see, okay, you need more B vitamins. Okay, you've got high eosinophils and high, this and that, likely parasites, or it could be food allergies, but very often because of that numbers, there could
Right.
be parasites there. Or, so there's so much out of just a regular blood work that when I see clients, I like to look at that first.
Okay.
And then when I'm figuring out there's certain nutrients I just know, supplements I know they're going to need or will work best with them because of those deficiencies.
Sure.
But in terms of customizing it, I muscle test. So
Ah.
I'm not guessing. I do muscle testing for them. And so
Hmm.
it does make it easier to say, okay, yeah, well, the protocol is this, but your body's not ready for that, or you may not need this particular supplement.
Okay.
Or if we do use it, your body just wants it at a lesser amount. So being able to really look at that piece has been really helpful for me, to guide my clients, to help my
Yeah.
patients.
Absolutely, and that makes total sense. It was funny. I did a this was maybe I had to be maybe 6 7 years ago, maybe a little bit more. I did a because I would see a naturopath
Hmm.
regularly just for annual checkup, those
Sure.
types of things. And I did a panel with her that was 35 vials of blood, and
Oh,
I don't know how I didn't pass out. But I was like, this is the first time I ever did anything like this. But it was like 20 pages of stuff.
yeah,
And then I went to her
yeah,
office and we sat for an hour and went line by line
through
over
everything.
every single thing. But the interesting thing is that I was shocked. I found out things about myself that I didn't know because it wouldn't come across in the conventional panels that they would do, the normal cholesterol, blood pressure, all that type of
Right.
stuff. So, the first time I had found out that I actually was positive for Lyme.
Hmm.
I didn't know I had Lyme. Okay, and I also found out that I had a milk allergy,
Hmm.
even though I don't drink milk. But when I was a kid, I did. But and then I kind of put it together. I was like, well, that milk that I drank, the gut problems, and then everything starts coming together
Right.
when you see. I'm going, oh, it's like the sixth sense. All of a sudden, all this stuff starts to hit you, and you're like, of course.
Yeah.
But it was the first time I had seen that, and even in certain minerals, she was like, okay, you need to boost up on this, and you need to bring check this out and all this. But it was a revelation to me,
Yes.
and I was like, wow. So the power of looking at that stuff,
Hmm.
and really, because if you think about it, you have your regular blood work that the conventional doctors will run, but then you under that is where you really see stuff. And sometimes this very well, that there's stuff happening at the bottom that you're not seeing yet at the top,
Correct.
right?
Correct.
So the doctors, the conventional doctors may not see it, but when you see this stuff down
Hmm.
here, you're already seeing stuff starting. And I'm sure
Yes.
you see that.
Yes. Oh, yeah. But even the regular blood work, when looked at it from a functional perspective,
You could
like
see the
the
trends, right?
CBC with differential,
Yeah,
what
right.
is considered to be normal levels in Western medicine, if you just look at the labs, it's like I can see a whole variety of other things looking at
Hmm.
that.
Hmm.
So there's
Yeah,
a lot of things and certain things that doctors don't generally order, like an iron panel, like the
right.
ferritin and the full iron panel. It's like, oh
Yep.
my gosh,
Yeah.
you've been having fatigue for a long time. Let's look at other pieces.
Yes.
And so yeah, it's um I enjoy doing the investigative work, being that little investigator.
Yeah. Yep.
Or when we talk about digestion, and so let's do real quick about what basic digestion is, because
Absolutely.
not everybody knows. So digestion really begins in the brain when we
Mm.
think about food, when we smell food, but that's not something you and I control so much. The thing we can control, number one thing we can control to improve our digestion is when that food is in our mouth, to chew it.
Right.
Like every bite should be chewed like 30 times. And people are like, 30 times? Like, yeah, it makes you slow down, breathe, have some gratitude, chew your food. Because when we chew, that's where the amylase is released into our chewing, and that breaks down carbohydrates.
Right.
If we don't do that, then when the food gets to our stomach, it's already behind the game.
Yeah.
You know, our food is not being broken down properly already. And then the other signals that require step one to work, the other signals can't come in properly. So when our food sits in our gut and it is not properly digested, then the food can putrefy, and, you know, it's like it ferments, and we wonder why we have bloating, why we have reflux. You go to your doctor and they say, okay, well, it's too much stomach acid. No, it's not.
No, it's not.
They were never taught that. And my physician friends tell me that. We were never taught.
Yeah.
So I don't blame them,
Sure.
but being taught by the company that wants to just give PPIs. So really, if we're having gastric reflux, it's usually because there's not enough hydrochloric acid.
That's right.
Well, why isn't there enough hydrochloric acid? You know, it lessens as we age, but it also requires zinc. We require enough adequate zinc in order to make the hydrochloric acid.
That's right.
So again, it's all these little pieces that have to come together properly, and in order to have good digestion. So if that has been fermenting, and it's, by the time it does get to the small intestine, which is where we absorb our nutrients, sure, a little bit more digestion occurs there, but that's where we absorb our nutrients. And if that food is not properly digested, then we've got large protein molecules, we've got other toxins that start trying to figure out how to get out of the stomach, and they start pushing through the intestinal lining.
That's right.
The intestinal lining is like 1 cell thick, 2 cells in some places. That's thin. There's not much there. So now we've got that pushing through, and now we've got toxins going into the bloodstream.
Yeah.
You know, we've got those proteins, and our immune system is like, what the heck is going on? We're under attack. You're not supposed to be here. So, you know, then that creates issues, because now the immune system over time gets confused and can start attacking the body. And then we have autoimmune.
Exactly.
You know, so now our immune system is not working well. And if our immune system is so busy trying to handle I don't like to use the word war, but, you know, the things going on inside of our body, then when that virus or that bacterial infection outside of the body comes by, our immune system is preoccupied, and it cannot be as effective on those other aspects. So, you know, that gastric reflux, leaky gut. So when it starts pushing through the lining, that's leaky gut people hear about. So it's just like, oh my gosh, there's such a huge importance in just paying attention to step one. Chew our food.
Absolutely.
It costs absolutely nothing.
Right.
It is a huge impact. But all of this, you know, when we talk about why is gut health so important? Well, again, it's our immune system, which I just spoke about. It's our mental health.
Yep.
Because if we don't have enough of the good bacteria in our gut, which has been affected by some of the things I've talked about, but also the toxins like the herbicides and pesticides, all of that, then we don't have enough good bacteria to make the important neurotransmitters, serotonin, 80% of it made in the gut. And that goes to our brain to make us feel good.
Exactly.
So yeah, that anxiety and depression, the toxins that come up from our gut into our brain, because if we've got leaky gut, we've got leaky brain. Our blood-brain barrier is not solid. Toxins can get through and then affect our brain. So there's a lot of pieces to our health that just start with our gut. Not a lot. Everything in our health
Yeah,
starts in our gut, really.
absolutely, absolutely. It's that 2 lane highway that it just
Yep.
goes back and forth, and and part of the issue with the way society is, everybody's on the run.
Yep.
Everybody's eating on the run,
Yep.
right? So not only we're eating on the run, but we're stressed to the max with our
Yes.
jobs, and most people, they don't take a lunch. They'll eat through their lunch, and they'll grab a quick bite while they're at their meeting and these types of
Yep.
things. And I was guilty of this in the past, where
Me
I
too.
sometimes I'd be so hungry, and I grab it, and I'm like, I'm just getting it down, that type of thing. And then if you pay for it later,
Yeah.
but so and if you look at there are a lot of, Italy, for example, the way they eat in Italy, they actually celebrate. It's a whole
Yes.
celebration when they eat, and they take hours. They can take 2 hours, 3 hours to eat an entire meal, because they celebrate it, and they chew their food, and they eat, and they talk, and it's a whole thing. And I think we need to kind of get back to, let's calm, because I mean, we know how, when you eat something and you're on the run, your digestion is messed
Right.
up, right? It's done, because
Yeah.
now your body can't digest because you're running around now, right? So that's
Right.
going to affect the whole
Exactly.
thing as well. So, it really, at the core levels, just like you said, even the chewing piece, it also, the mental piece, the stress piece as well, which affects the gut as well,
Hmm.
that we have to start to slow down, in my opinion, and take, I always say, if you're at, if at all possible, if you're at a job or whatever, take your lunch, go outside, even if you have to eat in your car, and just take some deep breaths, and relax, and get away from that. Sometimes just getting away and de-stressing can help
Yes.
that whole digestive piece,
Yes. Yes.
and I just think we have to do that more.
And I think the other piece of health that is really underestimated is, I'm glad you're drinking, hydration. I think
Yes,
so many of us, we don't get enough clean filtered water,
right. Yep,
and
exactly.
we need that water inside the cells. So even taking like a little pinch of Celtic salt or the
Hmm.
Himalayan sea salt, dropping that into the water,
Right.
so that it's giving us some extra minerals, but that salt helps the water get into the cells where we need it.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
so there's just, I, you're right, we're always on the go,
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
American society, and we need to slow down.
Yeah, it's one of those things I've talked about. Like, you see a lot of the visits to your doctor, the ER. The majority of them are either what? They're either fatigue,
Hmm.
right? And then fatigue ends up being dehydration, because eventually, when they hook people up, and they check their levels, most people go in dehydrated.
Yes.
So it's like fatigue, and it's like, that type of thing. So, and a lot of that can be solved. I'm not saying all of it, but a lot of it can be solved with proper hydration. And I'm sure you probably heard, I talked about on my last show, electrolytes, how important they are.
Yep.
It's not just about drinking water; it's about getting those electrolytes
Getting,
in.
yes.
Especially if you're an athlete, you're running around, you're sweating, you're active. You got to replenish. You got to put that stuff in. It's extremely important.
Yes. Well, and if we think about it, coming down to the cellular level,
Hmm.
where do we, when we have fatigue, anytime, where do we make that energy? Within
Yeah.
the cells, within the
Yep.
mitochondria of the
Mitochondria.
cell.
That's right.
And in the mitochondria, every cell, except for, I believe, our red blood cells, but
Right.
every cell in the body has like 1,000 mitochondria.
Yep.
And then we look at the liver and the heart, and there's about 5,000 mitochondria per cell. Think about how
Mm.
tiny a cell is.
Yeah.
And if there's
Exactly.
5,000 mitochondria in the brain, it's closer to 10,000 mitochondria per cell.
Amazing.
So if we are not getting the proper nutrients, including water,
Hmm.
into that mitochondria so that it can make energy, where are we going to feel it first? Brain fog.
That's it. Yep.
We're going to feel it in our brain, and then our liver is going to be struggling, our heart, because those organs have such a huge need.
Right.
They require
Exactly.
so much energy.
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So again, it comes back down to we need to take control. We
Yep.
need to listen up, to learn, to pay attention, change some of our habits. Not always easy to do, but
Of course.
important.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
And take care of our bodies.
Definitely. Definitely. I
And this
completely
is,
agree.
you mentioned the energy work that I do.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to say, recently, probably 99% of the clients that come in, when I go to muscle test them or I use vials to help determine some of the toxins in their bodies, many times I can't, or even if I'm just doing energy healing on them, what I experience is like an energetic armor. Like
Mm.
people are armored up, whether it's from traumas in their life, whether it's what people went through in the pandemic.
Right.
But I'm experiencing that. I'm seeing that in clients more and more frequently. And that's where I'm saying, I have a method to help them open up and remove that armor. Um, and what I find is when we do that, I tell them, hey, if your only way to survive is when we're done here, you need to put that back on. That's in your control.
Mm-hmm.
But right now, right here, you're safe. Nothing's going to happen. Let's remove that armor, see what's going on. And many times when they can keep working to keep that armor off, they start to get better more easily.
Yeah.
They start to be more in tune with their bodies.
Right.
And so it's just another piece to put out there for people. If you've been struggling, if you've had, whether it's childhood traumas, whether it's you had things happen, you lost loved ones to COVID or the comorbidities, or, just the fear of what has gone on these last years. If that's part of what you are doing to protect yourself, and it's a way of not feeling.
Right.
But it's find some help. It's something like, pardon me, I help, my clients, but there's other people out there that do this. And I think you will find that when you can start to address those traumas, and I'm not trying to strip people wide open, but and many people, it's like, okay, then maybe a therapist will help.
Right.
But find ways to deal with some of that. So just to put that out there, because I'm just experiencing it more and more with my clients.
I was going to ask that because are you finding like I know for me, and I'm an open book on this show. I've talked about it a lot. I had a lot of childhood trauma because of a messy divorce when I was around 7 or 8 years old, that really affected me and created a lot of anxiety in my life through my teenage years, which I ended up going to therapy for a while. And, because I held everything in,
Yes.
and because I was introverted and I held it, I didn't want to talk about it, but it would manifest in many ways, and anxiety would be one of them.
Mm-hmm.
And, I did get some help as far as talk therapy, which helped me a lot. And, one of the things he told me was you do have to get it out. You have to find outlets. This is where, working out and bodybuilding started coming into play for me, and martial arts and things like that, which helped. But I find even as I was able to kind of deal with it as I got older, it still triggered every now and then.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. It could be, just a song that I listened to when I was 8 years old and my parents were fighting in the other room, or it could be, anything that would remind me of that, because it's still there. It's still there. It's just, I may push it back, but it's still there. And I was going to ask you about that, because in your work, are you finding that the majority of people are coming in with more childhood trauma than anything else?
It's interesting because when I work with people, because I'm clairaudient, so I can hear telepathically.
Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes when I'm working on people, I don't always know who it is. I just know that there's somebody present that's no longer alive, no longer in body.
Okay.
And so, like, when client was like, okay, um, there's a very angry energy.
Mm-hmm.
Is there someone that has died that there still was some unfinished business? And it's like, oh yeah, my dad, either my dad or my brother.
Right.
And so, and then that allows, when the person's receptive, that allows dad to come in and give messages. So I can, express what I'm hearing from dad.
Mm-hmm.
And that can be very healing for people
Sure. Sure.
because, and I said it the same time my client said it. Your dad's saying, and my client said at the same time, he sees differently now that he's on the other side.
Right.
And it's like, yeah. And he's really, really sorry.
Wow.
So yeah, there can be things that are childhood traumas. I'm not an astrologer. I'm not, but I am understanding and hearing from many who know more than I do that we are energetically in a time of healing.
Mm-hmm.
In order for things to shift, energetically, for the lack of a different word, that we need to heal.
Yeah.
So I think in that respect, I think that might be why there's more childhood traumas coming up, more people from the other side. When I'm working on clients, it's like, okay, there's somebody here, it's like, is your mom still alive? No. Okay. Is your, because like there's a difference in energy of someone who's still in body versus someone who's passed on.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't, and I hesitate to even say this because I don't, I'm not going to guarantee that I'm going to get that message from every time I'm working on somebody. There may not be. Mm-hmm. But sometimes if that is part of why a person is in that protective armor, then their loved one may try to come through. Right. To say, hey, I'm sorry. I did love you. I didn't know how to show it. Or, it was my childhood traumas that made me respond the way I did. Mm-hmm. And I think and particularly when it's been a situation with a parent, in my own situation, my parents were, in the Depression. They, from their parents, they never heard the words, I love you. So when I was a child, they never said those words.
Right.
Is that a trauma? Sure.
Sure. Yeah.
But when we can begin to understand and go to a place of compassion, from my perspective, it's like, okay, mom and dad, you guys worked so hard. You had 10 children.
Wow.
And, you did everything you could. You never heard the words. So, yeah, it's something I continue to work through, but I am so grateful and I have such compassion for them with what they were going through. And I think that helps us shift.
Yeah.
When we can try to understand that our parents were reacting to their stories, to their childhood traumas. But I think it now is a time where we need to heal this, because I do believe that the more of that energy that we hold, it enables our body to be more unhealthy. Mm-hmm. And you probably have heard of the book, The Body Keeps the Score.
Yeah.
From Dr. Bessel van der Kolk. Mm-hmm. And he speaks to that we hold that in our cellular memory. We hold that in our bodies. And so the more we can open up and release that, I think it gives us better opportunity for our bodies for our innate wisdom to begin to step in
Absolutely.
and heal.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You're absolutely right, because people, I know people who are holding on to stuff, you know, from, and they're having a lot of problems trying to let go of stuff. And again, I was one of those as well, because of everything that happened. One thing I found for me that helped me, as now I'm a parent, is that it did make me a better parent. I feel like it changed my perspective of parenting, because, and what I went through with my parents, like my dad wasn't in the picture a lot, because once they got divorced, I wasn't around him a lot. He was in and out of my life, and we kind of reconnected later on in life, but we didn't have that relationship that you should have. And he's since passed, but I said to myself, quietly, if I ever have a child, I don't want my child to go through those things.
Yeah.
I want to change, and it's part of the not only the energy but the genetics of it, right? Think about it, because if I'm cutting that right here, okay, because his dad was a military dad, and he was in the military, and he treated him this way, and he treated me this way, and I'm saying, all right, cut. I'm cutting that here, and I'm saying I'm going to change that dynamic now. And now from this point going forward, my child is going to look, is going to have a different perspective, and then maybe she will pass that down generationally to her kids.
Yes.
So sometimes even though you go through that trauma, sometimes it can be a gift in the way I look at it, because it does make you shift in certain ways, even with other people or your children and that type of thing.
Yes.
And that was kind of the way I healed a little bit as well.
Absolutely. And as an example, I have an inherited neurological condition called Tourette syndrome. As an ICU nurse. And it's something that, it's like, that constant twitching and everything causes physical pain. And then when you're a kid, particularly a teenager, and you look different because you're blinking and moving and the whole emotional aspect of that. But on the flip side, as an ICU nurse, of course, all my colleagues knew that I had Tourette syndrome. We admitted a teenage boy through the ER who had attempted suicide. He had Tourette's.
Wow.
So, of course, they quickly shifted assignments for everybody see if I get teared up.
Yeah, sure.
So that I can help this boy.
Sure.
I could show him it's okay. You can get through this. You can still be productive. And in fact, even the doctors didn't understand Tourette's, the residents in the ICU, because they said in the, studying, there's literally one short paragraph about Tourette's. That's all they knew. So sometimes the things that are hard do become a blessing.
Yes.
Because if I was able to touch even one life, that's why I became a nurse.
Yep. And it's worth it.
And able to do it in a way that no one else in that unit could.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, it's worth it. It's worth it because you're doing the work that you were put here to do,
Right.
and it's coming through you. Right, it's coming through. And that's the way I feel about it as well. On this side of things, it's coming through me. I'm like, I have to do this. You have patients and clients that depend on you to guide them through this, and it's a gift for them that they're working with you. And I have people who may depend on this show and say, hey, look, you made me change my thinking on this, or on that, or whatever the case may be. Great. That's
Yes.
great. That's what we
Yes.
want to do. Let's have the conversation. Let's educate each other. Let's help each
Yes.
other, you know?
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, that's the energy. We're bringing up that energy.
Yeah.
You know, if we can do
Yeah.
that collectively, you know, listen, it gets back to the healing at the end of the day, right? This is where we want to be, the healing part of it.
We are all here to help one another in
Yes,
whatever way. And
absolutely.
oftentimes we really have no idea how we have impacted somebody. And it might be something as simple as when you're walking down the street and you see another person, give them a smile.
Yep,
Maybe that
absolutely.
person has been experiencing trauma and they just need a smile.
Yeah, yeah,
So there's so many ways we can help people heal, and it doesn't have to be in a huge intellectual way. It can just
absolutely.
be energetically being present for another person.
Definitely. Definitely. And it's so important. And I think if we think along those lines, and we can definitely start the healing process on this planet,
Yes.
which is desperately needed. And
Yeah.
I congratulate you for what you've done, not only as a nurse, but just what you're in your work that you're doing now, and in the help that you're providing people, the gifts that you're providing people.
Thank
and
you.
and I commend you, for everything that you're doing. And again, this is why I want to bring experts like yourself, because
Mm.
you really hone in on what we need to do, and it's so important.
Well,
So
I have to say, George, you are, just because of who you are, you, you make people feel comfortable. Like, I have never shared some of the stuff I just told you.
listen, hey, it's
So, and it's all good. It's all okay.
absolutely, listen, it's just a conversation. It's just a conversation. Listen, at the end of the day, I I I I want you to feel like I'm a friend. I want you to feel like if there's anything I can do for you, and
Yeah.
any way I can help you, I would love to bring you back on,
Oh,
and
I'd love
have
to go
and
back.
have more conversations and talk about all different types of areas of health. We
Yeah,
should
there's so many
definitely do
things
that.
we didn't get to talk to. We
Right.
didn't talk about concussions
Yeah.
and all of that. And there's a lot of pieces. If somebody really wants to know more about that gut brain connection, I was invited to write a chapter in a book. And the chapter that I wrote is Healing the Gut to Heal the Brain. So for people who have had concussions, please look up that information until I can come back and we can talk more about it.
Definitely.
Um, and on my website, Brain Works for Life, in order to make it easy for people, we just put a link to get to the book. It just goes to Amazon to the right book so that it's easy to pick up. I don't make anything off of it. I was just a contributing author. So I don't, share this information to make money. I'm sharing it for education because
Absolutely.
there are so many people out there struggling after a concussion. And you can read a couple of the stories on my website, but really work on your gut
Yeah.
so that your concussion can heal. But yeah, there's more information in that chapter that talks about it more thoroughly.
Definitely, definitely. And we'll definitely have you back on. And make sure, everyone, you go to brainworksforlife.com. And great website. I've been on it many times. There's great articles on there as well. One of the articles I cited on my site is well on that. So if you guys want to get some information on there, you can either check it out on her site. You can check out the article on my site as well. But also
Yes,
check out all the information. And if folks want to work with Sandy, they can contact you through that site as well, correct?
absolutely. Yeah, there's a location for contact that'll reach my email. So yeah, I'm happy
Absolutely.
to
So
happy to work with people. I work with people around the country. So
absolutely great. Absolutely. Yeah. So definitely everybody check out Sandy's website. So Sandy, thank you so much for being
oh
on
my
the show
gosh.
today. It was an honor. It was a pleasure. And we'll definitely have you back again because we got so much more to go over.
I know we can talk for hours.
Absolutely. Us health
Oh,
folk, you know how that goes.
yes, I know. Well, thank you, George. And again, thanks for what you do.
Oh,
I'm really
absolutely.
grateful that you are here, um, spreading the news, sharing the
Yes.
information.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. We'll be right back with you. Okay. All right, folks. So again, Brainworks for Life is the website. Make sure you check Sandy out. And I want to thank you guys for tuning in today. It was an absolute fantastic conversation, and it's just at the end of the day, it's energy. We're all energy, and let's bring the energy up and let's heal. That's what we need to do. So, all right, guys, make sure you take care of yourselves. Make sure you take care of each other. And as always, control your health. Have a great day.